Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to be hot foiling on velvet. Now this video started out in a completely different way. I have this Pressed Bouquet Press plate and I'm going to first hot foil it with this rainbow glimmer foil. Now what I had intended to do was hot foil with this rainbow glimmer foil and then do some ink blending with some similar but lighter colors. And this is one of those videos that took a turn partway through. I had an idea and when I foiled this, I just liked it on its own. I didn't think it needed any ink blending. So here we go. I take my Pressed Bouquet press plate and put it on my Glimmer hot foil system. It is still heating up. When I put it on, I let it heat up with my machine. And while I was waiting for that to heat up, I cut a piece that was the right width for my cardstock. I wanted these stripes from this rainbow foil to be horizontal on my card. I put the foil with the pretty side facing the plate and my hammer mill cardstock on top of that, pressed the timer button, and once that timer button was done, I put it through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 for the pressure. Now, I absolutely loved the way this turned out. I didn't expect the rainbow foil to be as pretty as it was on a floral image. I was curious about how it would look, and here is the final result. I love all of those different colors, and I specifically chose to do this one with this because of the green at the bottom. I thought it would look good for the leaves, even with the blue. Now, anytime I do hot foiling, I always do the solid with the solid hot foil plate. I don't necessarily intend to use it for the card sometimes, and I'm not using it for this card, but I do often use those pieces for die cutting sentiments or die cutting other pieces. So it never goes to waste, and it's always a good idea to use as much of the foil as possible. And I figure while my machine is hot, I might as well use it up then. And then I put this piece in my drawer with my specialty papers to use for future projects if I don't use it for the current card. So the method for the solid hot foiling is exactly the same as using a press plate. You just substitute the press plate or the hot foil plate for the solid hot foil plate. Put the pretty side against the solid plate, put the cardstock on top, and I always foil on hammer mill, or often foil on hammer mill. And here is the result. And I actually really like the bright white against that rainbow foil. Now in the middle of this, I was curious what would happen if I foiled on the velvet cardstock that I've used for a few cards now. It's got adhesive on the back. I'm using some champagne glimmer foil. And to be honest, I did not expect this to work at all. I figured because of the texture of the velvet that there is no way that the foil would stick to it, but I was curious. So I thought, why not? There's nothing to lose. I have stamped and embossed on velvet cardstock before, and it created a really cool look. For this one, I did go back and forth through my die cutting machine for that pressure. And to be honest, I'm not even sure that was necessary. So once I took that off and the velvet off, I peeled off the Glimmer hot foil. And look at the beautiful results. Now I will compare it with my rainbow one. I do have more foil that's stuck to this than on the hammer mill cardstock, but still it gave a really, really great result, and I was pleasantly surprised. So I do solid hot foil that extra piece. Might as well get as much use as possible out of it while I have my machine out and hot. Once again, I'm not using it for this particular card, but I will either die cut it or use it for something in the future. So put that solid hot foil on, plate on, let that heat up, put the pretty side of the foil against that, and then I'm just foiling onto some hammer mill cardstock. So here is the foiling on the velvet, and in just a second I'm going to grab the rainbow foil, and you can see that I have more of the gold foil on there. There's a lot more detail in the rainbow one, but still I didn't expect the foil to even stick to that velvet, let alone foil that much on there. Now here's that extra foil. That's why I'm saying I might not even needed to put it back and forth through the machine. I will try it at another point and see if just putting it through once puts on less foil. But again, pleasantly surprised with the results. It's a great way to get a very simple card because you can't really do a lot of coloring in with that velvet, but for just a nice silhouette or something on there and then a very simple sentiment, I thought that would be absolutely gorgeous. So while I changed my plan for my rainbow card, I wanted to foil a couple sentiments with that rainbow foil. So I chose the thanks sentiment and then I chose the hello. I wasn't sure which one I was going to use on that card. Put a little piece of that foil with the dull side facing the cardstock, the pretty side facing the plate, and I taped everything in place just to make sure that they weren't going to shift in my machine. I have my Glimmer machine ready for me to go, and I'm going to put that with the plate side down, put my plates on top, and then press the timer button. And once that is done, I will put that through my die cutting machine again. And you can see I got a little bit of overfoiling on the bottom of that hello there. I could just use a sand eraser to easily remove that. Do want to make sure not to use that sand eraser over any of the other foiled surfaces because it does affect the finish of it. So I am very careful to only use that on the foil outside of the sentiment, and I'm being careful to avoid that sentiment. Now this hot foil plate set has dies to cut them out, so I can tape those in place and cut them out. If your dies do not touch, you can cut them both at the same time, but if by chance you have them hot foiled a little bit too close to each other, you can do them separately. I thought I was going to be able to do them together, but in the end, I pull one off because putting that hello on there kind of shifted the thanks. You do want to tape them in place just to make sure they don't shift in your die cutting machine. And I also find that when you're die cutting sentiments, if you have the die with the blade facing down, which is not the way I normally die cut, you won't have that die shift on you or the cardstock shift on you. It'll die cut exactly where you put your die. And here are the final result from here. You can't really see the color of the foil until you'll tilt it into the light, but they're going to be perfect for the front of the card. For the black velvet and champagne foil card, I'm using some sentiments from the Anemone Glimmer Blooms set. This is going to be perfect for the simplicity of the gold and black card. So I'm doing the shadow out of white cardstock, and then I'm doing the friend sentiment with the gold cardstock. Now this gold piece is going to be the matte on my card, so rather than cutting an extra piece of gold to cut out of, I'm just die cutting that friend sentiment out of the center of it. This is going to be covered by the image, so you're never going to know that anything was die cut out of it, and it's just a great way to get some extra use out of your specialty cardstock, stretch it a little bit. If you wanted, you could die cut a few of them out of there and have the extras for future use. I never seem to need to do that. I just die cut my sentiments as I'm going to use them rather than having a bunch of extra sentiments laying around being used, or possibly not. So once those are all die cut, I can glue everything in place. I'm just gluing it with some Barely Art glue. I have it in a fine tip bottle, and I like to use an acrylic stamping block just to hold everything down and in place while I have my hands free to work on the next step. Because this velvet cardstock has adhesive on the back of that, I can just take that adhesive off, carefully place it down, and then glue it to the front of that mat, and then work on my sentiment. Because this design is very, very simple and there's not a whole lot of dimension to the velvet and the foil, I die cut the shadow a couple times for the sentiment and then layered it on top of each other just to give it a little bit of dimension before gluing the gold sentiment right on top of that. Once again, having the fine tip on the Barely Art glue makes it really easy to get just a tiny little bit of glue behind that sentiment to glue it down easily. And I'm also using that block to hold everything down just till that glue starts to hold. And it really only takes a few seconds for that glue to really start to grip and start to hold that cardstock together. Once that is together, I can glue that friend sentiment on the front of there. For the rainbow foiled card, I have some Tonic Tidal Wave cardstock here, and it's a beautiful blue that has a bit of an iridescent shimmer that I thought would look great with that rainbow foil. I'm putting that behind the image piece, and then I'm going to put my rainbow foiled bouquet on the front of that. And once again, I absolutely love how simple it is. But if you wanted, you could easily ink blend those flowers to add a little bit more color. I just didn't think it was necessary. I ended up choosing that Hello foiled sentiment to go on the front of the card, and I die cut an extra piece of white cardstock to put behind it for just a touch of extra dimension, glued that to the front of the card, and then I am gluing the friend sentiment. Once again, using that Barely Art glue and then putting that acrylic block on there just to hold it in place for a few moments before it dries. Here is the final results of the cards. I absolutely loved how they turned out. That rainbow foil is beautiful and adds a lot of color to a very, very simple design. And the most surprising is the champagne foil on that velvet. I love the texture of the velvet with the gold foil on there, and it turned out fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Have a fantastic day.